Aloha, welcome to Progressive Provisions with Taika Waititi. Aloha. I know I said yesterday I'm not necessarily going to do this every day. I'm only going to speak when I have thoughts, and so I am actually honoring that commitment. I had some good thoughts and a great talk with my mom yesterday. And today's film is titled "How Do Conservatives and Progressives Differ? Old and New Takes." All right, so I will admit, let me define the conflict and define progressive versus conservative. And I will admit to a somewhat simplified definition that I'm about to level, which is not super progressive, but I think it serves a purpose, and I will defend pretty heartily the statements I'm about to make and the definitions I'm about to give. So I will say progressive, some of the defining attributes of progressivism is this idea of improving well-being and thriving for as many people as we can. That's what we're committed to finding and implementing answers, um, and we understand that that's going to take time. Conservatism, the definition, in my opinion. So I'm not talking about like your small government and these kind of like agenda items. I'm talking about if you look at the whole history of time, you can really there's really two types of people. There's the progressive and there's the conservative. And over the whole arc of human history, and if you look at policies that are implemented and you look at the reactions that come from policies and the reactions that come from worldwide events, you will have progressive or neutral or conservative reactions. I think you really can simplify it so much. And the conservative reaction is normally to maintain status quo, to uh, to maintain and be loyal to and uphold certain principles, to maintain hierarchies. Yes, this is true. So many are blind to this, but absolutely that's a huge part of conservative ism and maintaining privileges. And you will see that also this sense of we have already the answers. The best answers have been discovered. We just need to commit to them. That's conservatism. And if you doubt that definition, I don't know, like let me know because it's very simple to see. You will see this in every debate. In every debate. And by the way, you see both of these in Republican sides and Democratic sides. This is not a clear party split at all, at all, at all, at all, at all. Biden shows great conservatism when I lost the example, so I'll move on. But I think I'll think of something. So one of the real big problems is that we literally see things differently. This is something that we just really have to address and accept and give room for, is we are literally seeing the world differently. Just different feelings come up and different interpretations of the way we see things. And it is so hard for us to have empathy about this because it's literally how we're experiencing the universe. And so some of the ways we see things differently are progressives. You know, force must be reserved. We got to be careful with it, and it must be humane. Whereas conservatives, force can gain advantage. Progressives, we are all us. Conservatives, us versus them. Conservatives, everything is so black and white. Everything is clear. It's all been laid out, guys. We just need to adhere to it. Your progressives, they're more into gray and nuance. They're always looking for the in between. Um, Progressives are always they see things. So they see equality needed, and conservatives are more about a maintenance of hierarchy. I guess this isn't really how you see it, so maybe that was mistitled. Violations of norms and restorative justice. Progressives are okay with violations of norms. Like, we feel like some of the norms that are socially constructed are arbitrary, um, like gender roles, things like this. Conservatives believe in a punishment for norm violation, or sometimes not even any kind of like movement for norm violation. And they're also in a more punitive justice versus restorative justice. So this isn't necessarily seeing things different. Those were not good examples, but these are definitely differences. Um, but I have been surprised. We definitely do see the world differently, and I think it's because of the things that elicit certain emotions in us, and a few other things. I'll get into that another time. Okay, my statements here, you can see they're actually according to research from the last slide and from this one. What is important according to research? You'll see that things like climate change, environment, race relations, healthcare, and equality show up way, way sooner and way more important than they do for conservatives. For conservatism, you see things like terrorism, economy, military, immigration, and freedom taking higher priority first, which is not to say that either of these aren't important to the other. It's just about which come first. Okay, here's where I think I have a unique take, and I don't think I've heard it from others. So let me just tell you what I think is one fundamental difference and wrap this up. One fundamental difference between progressivism and conservatism is the way I think conservatives see things is they see that there's important principles like freedom, like security, they like equality, and maybe equity, it depends. If they get all worried about everybody getting the same amount of money and communism and that kind of thing, it can get wonky, but they care about it. And they also care about the principle of productivity, right? Like we have to produce in order to keep with our power relative to the rest of the world. These are all important principles to progressives and conservatives alike. Here is the difference. Conservatives are really looking for any violation of this. So when it comes to evaluating a policy, the only real question is, does this violate one of the principles? You might ask, which principle? That's a good question, and I would answer whatever one evokes the most feelings at the time. That's why inherently conservatism is impossible to be an inconsistent philosophy. Let me give you some examples. Right now, they're saying don't tread on freedoms when it comes to wearing masks, etc., and my body autonomy, which makes sense. That is a principle, and it is a principle being violated to some extent, right? And so they're focusing on that, but what they're not focusing at this moment is the security of it, because it's not particularly, it doesn't pull on the heartstrings, right? It's not in the pathos realms. They're not experiencing that fear. They're saying avoid that fear. And so you can see this also when what we were really feeling, back in 2001 was this anger, this despair regarding losing so many and with the terrorists. And so during that time, freedom was not the thing we had to watch out for. We had to watch out for security, and thus conservatives on the Republican and the Democrats voted for the Patriot Act, which absolutely is a violation of freedom and privacy. But we did not hear at this time. It was not what was riling up conservatives, because at that time the focus was security and how we got to be really careful to preserve security. And it's really important. So another way to look at this, and this is how I think progressives see it. We see it as principles as a means to an end. We see them as a means to well-being. We understand that you can't turn freedom all the way up to an 11, all the way to an 11, bruv. We can't turn it all the way up to, we can't turn freedom and security all the way up to 11. They kind of are counterbalance each other, right? If you turn up your security all the way to 11, you can't also turn up your freedom to an 11. So we are all about adjusting these dials to achieve well-being. We understand, progressives, that productivity is important. We understand that equality is important. We understand that they contradict. We cannot turn them both up to 11. That is impossible. So really, and let me know if you've heard this take, because I think this is my own. Really, a profound difference between progressives and conservatives is that conservatives judge based on violation or loyalty to a certain principle, any given principle that is eliciting whatever feelings at a time. Whereas progressives understand that those principles cannot be maxed out, but must be tweaked and dialed, and we must find new ways for security, and new ways for freedom, and new ways for equality, new ways for productivity, all to the goal of as much well-being and health as we can promote. That's the difference.